Chapter 3, Mary, Sage Creek, Texas, 1884. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over the landscape as the weary stagecoach rumbled into the heart of Sage Creek, Texas. Dust billowed around the wooden wheels, settling like a fine powder on Mary Lockwood's tattered dress. Not that it mattered. Her clothes were old and worn, much like herself. Elizabeth laid a delicate hand on her arm. "We're almost there. Are you nervous?" Her friend's warm gaze held the promises of a brighter future, but Mary wouldn't let herself believe it fully. It was all too good to be true. And in her experience, things that seemed too good, too easy, often came with a catch. Nervous doesn't quite capture it. Though Mary was trying to keep her hopes from rising too quickly, she could not deny the flutter of anxious anticipation dancing in her chest. She still couldn't believe she'd taken Elizabeth up on this offer. Chicago was all she had ever known, and she wasn't sure how she would fit into this new life. Plus, living with Elizabeth and her new husband might be awkward, but it was better than the alternative. Almost anything would be better than working at the saloon. The stagecoach rolled past a weathered wooden sign that read Sage Creek, and Mary took a deep breath, her heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. She hoped Elizabeth was right, that this small frontier town held the promise of a new beginning, a fresh start from her painful past. When the stagecoach stopped at the small station, Carl climbed out first. Mary could see why Elizabeth liked him. He was large and imposing, but had a gentle spirit. The kind of man who would offer protection, but never harm. Something Mary wished she had found at some point in her life. Carl held out his hand to his wife first and helped her down. Then he turned back and held his hand out to Mary. She clutched her small bag to her chest with one hand and took his hand with the other. This bag held only the little money she had, a brush, and a mirror, so that she could freshen up when the opportunity presented itself. She had one other bag on the back of the coach that contained her few clothing items, but that was all she had to her name. Elizabeth had promised her a job, but what if it fell through? What if there was no man interested in her as Elizabeth claimed? She couldn't live with her friend forever. A feeling of nausea tugged at her. This had been a mistake. At least in Chicago, she could take care of herself. She'd had a job and a place to stay. Yes, she'd hated her job, and she'd feared her employers. But here she was entirely dependent upon someone else. "Welcome to Sage Creek, Mary." Elizabeth looped her arm through Mary's and flashed her a soft smile. "I know it's not as busy or even as pretty as Chicago yet, but I promise you'll get used to it." Mary took a deep breath to calm her anxiety and looked around the town. It was not what she had expected at all. Sage Creek was small and brown, the buildings barely standing out from the landscape around them, where Chicago had been big and vibrant. What would she do here? "It's much smaller than I expected." Elizabeth tipped her head back and laughed, the sound soft and melodious like bells. "Yes, that is exactly what I thought the first time I saw it too. But progress is coming. I opened my dress shop, and another building down the way is being built. Plus, there is talk of the railroad coming through." Behind them, Carl grumbled. "The railroad isn't necessarily a good thing. It brings a lot of noise and too many people. The town is good just the way it is." Elizabeth shook her head as Carl moved to the coach to grab their bags. "Don't mind him. He doesn't like too much change at once." "I can understand his feelings," Mary said softly, as she gripped her bag tighter. This was definitely more change than she was used to. "You have nothing to worry about." Elizabeth patted Mary's arm with her free hand. "Would you like to see the shop?" "I suppose." Mary still didn't know exactly what she was expected to do in this shop. Yes, she could sew, but she was no seamstress. "Wonderful. I just know you're going to love it as much as I do." "You ladies go on ahead," Carl said, as he placed the bags at his feet. "I'll load up the wagon and come get you." With a grin, Elizabeth led the way from the station into the heart of the town. Though the buildings looked very similar, Mary could see differences between them as they passed. The bank was a little bigger than the other buildings, the saloon a bit more lively. The first thing she noticed when they arrived at the mercantile was a large window with a dress displayed. It was a beautiful red gingham dress, prettier than one Mary had ever owned. The sides were bustled to create a cascading pattern, and an exquisite lace detail lined the neck. "Elizabeth, is that your dress?" Elizabeth's smile lit up her whole face. "It is. Do you like it?" "It's beautiful. I don't know that I've ever seen a prettier dress." "Come on, there are many more upstairs." Elizabeth let go of Mary's arm to pull open the door, and the sound of a bell softly tinkling overhead reached Mary's ears. This store was smaller than the one she had shopped at in Chicago, but she didn't need much, and she could see it held the necessities as everything was arranged in neat rows. "Elizabeth, thank goodness you're back." Mary startled at the male voice and then scanned the area to find the owner. From the back of the store emerged an older gentleman with salt and pepper hair and lines etched into his face. Her breath caught. Though time had definitely played with his features, he was still handsome and fit. More than that, though, Mary sensed a kind demeanor. "I am Mr. Brown. Thank you for watching the shop for me while I was gone. This is my friend Mary Lockwood. She will be staying with me and helping out in my shop." Mr. Brown turned his gaze on Mary, and she wilted. He was the shop owner? Would he look at her as the other business owners in Chicago had? Either they regarded her with suspicion, expecting her to steal from them, or they gazed at her with disdain, as if she was trash. She didn't think she could bear it if he looked at her the same way. But though his eyes appraised her, she saw neither suspicion nor disdain. In fact, she saw little reaction at all. His lips neither smiled nor frowned, but remained in a straight line. He offered her a simple nod. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Lockwood." And then his attention returned to Elizabeth. Mary should feel relieved. His greeting may have lacked warmth, but it was much kinder than most she'd received. Still, she couldn't deny she had been hoping for more. Some hint that he saw her as a person and not a thief or degenerate. "I'm glad you brought help. I've had at least half a dozen women in here asking about dresses while you were gone, and I didn't know what to tell them, so I simply took their names and figured you could deal with it when you returned." Elizabeth grabbed Mary's hands, a wide smile on her face. "See, Mary? I told you that you would have work. 6 women? That's more than I've had since I started." "That's wonderful, but I don't even know what to do." Mary kept her voice low. She wished they were having this conversation out of Mr. Brown's earshot. She didn't want to give him reasons to think less of her. "Oh, but you will, and it will be wonderful. Come on, let me show you upstairs." "Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'll get the information when we return." He grumbled as he returned to the back of the store, but Elizabeth paid him no mind. She tugged Mary to the suitcase and then led the way upstairs. When they reached the landing, Mary gasped. It was a small space and tight, but she could see the potential. Elizabeth had beautiful fabrics stacked to one side. A sewing machine and a dress model sat on the other side. In the middle was a table for cutting fabric and attaching pins for patterns. Elizabeth, this is wonderful. Mary wandered over to the fabric and gently lifted the top one. It was soft beneath her fingertips, not scratchy like her own dresses. Isn't it? And I hope to grow even more. You'll work here, taking orders, cutting fabric, and pinning the patterns. Then I'll sew. It will be tight working quarters, but much better than the saloon, don't you agree? Mary nodded. I do. I just hope we bring in enough money to make it worth it for you to keep me. Elizabeth came over and placed a hand on Mary's arm. Don't you worry about that. God told me that I was to bring you here, and I know that He will figure out the rest. Now, how about we get the names of the women and return to the homestead to get you settled in and cleaned up? I know you must be feeling as grimy as I do. Carl might not like the idea of a railroad coming in, but I would love it if we could travel from town without a long, dusty coach ride. Mary agreed and followed Elizabeth back downstairs. They stopped long enough to gather the names from Mr. Brown, and then they exited the mercantile. True to his word, Carl waited out front for them, the bags already in the wagon. "Did you get everything you needed?" he asked as he helped Elizabeth up. Yes, thank you. 6 women came looking for dresses while we were gone. 6, huh? That's wonderful. He helped Mary up and then climbed into the other side. I guess you'll have your hands full for a bit. Elizabeth smiled and grabbed Mary's hands. I will, but thankfully I'll have help. Mary smiled back, but she could not shake the worry from her heart. Elizabeth might be sure this was God's will for her, but Mary wasn't. She didn't even know this God Elizabeth spoke of, and she'd never done work besides at the saloon. What if this turned out to be a spectacular failure?